João, Marcelo, and Felipe were the names that everyone knew at college. It wasn't just because of their academic performance that they stood out, but mainly because of the way they behaved. Sons of very wealthy families, they walked the halls with the certainty that they were untouchable. Each one had a unique style, but always wore designer clothes and expensive accessories. They made a point of showing how different they were, and, in their minds, superior to the rest of the students. João, the leader of the group, had a confident posture and a mocking smile that bothered many people. He spoke loudly, laughed contemptuously, and never seemed to care about the impact of his words. Always by his side was Marcelo, the brains of the trio. Calculating and cold, he thought about everything before acting. If João was the one who said things directly, Marcelo was the one who made poisonous comments with false friendliness, which made his provocations even crueler. And Felipe? Well, Felipe was the follower, always laughing at the jokes and enjoying the company of the other two. He wasn't as bold, but he was always ready to support any of their actions. The three of them liked to walk around campus as if they were celebrities, and, in a way, they were. There wasn't a student who didn't know who they were. Their parties were legendary. Their sports cars were the topic of conversation in the hallways, and people always seemed to be trying to please them, or at the very least, avoid friction. After all, anyone who wanted a promising future at that college knew that it would be good to maintain a good relationship with the trio. But there was a darker side to this popularity. João, Marcelo, and Felipe liked to choose targets for their jokes. For them, the most fun was to pick on someone who seemed inferior, someone with simpler clothes, without much money, or who didn't fit the standards of popularity. And when they chose a target, they made sure to humiliate that person in front of everyone. Comments about their appearance, mockery about their clothes, or even about the way they spoke, nothing escaped. The problem was that no one dared to confront them. The trio was seen as untouchable, not only because of the influence of their families, but also because of the aggressive way they treated any attempt at confrontation. If someone questioned their behavior, that person automatically became the next target of their cruel jokes. And so, most people preferred to remain silent, avoiding drawing attention. Things seemed to be under control for João, Marcelo, and Felipe. They continued to dominate the college environment, certain that nothing would ever change. Until the day someone appeared and challenged this dynamic. Someone who, unlike everyone else, was not afraid to face the trio. This person was about to completely transform college life and show that their arrogance had a limit. A new semester had begun at the college, and with it, new faces appeared in the hallways. Among them was a young woman named Mariana. Unlike many of the other students, Mariana did not have an appearance that immediately caught attention. Her brown hair was always tied up in a simple bun. Her clothes were discreet, without designer labels, and her shoes, although well kept, were clearly old models. However, there was something about her that set her apart from the others: her posture. Mariana walked around the college with confidence. Not the arrogant, showy confidence of João, Marcelo, and Felipe, but a calm confidence that came from within. She didn't need approving glances or admiration, because she knew what she wanted and why she was there. Her eyes were always focused on what mattered, her studies and her future. But, as expected, this attitude caught the attention of the trio. João was the first to notice her. "Look there, another scholarship student lost on campus," he commented in a mocking tone as he passed her in the hallway. Marcelo, always ready to add to the meanness, looked at Mariana and added, "She looks like she came out of a used clothing catalog." Felipe, as usual, laughed out loud, drawing the attention of other students around. Mariana, upon hearing the comments, glanced at the three. There was no anger in her eyes, just a slight curiosity, as if she was trying to understand why someone would waste their time with that. She continued on her way, ignoring the laughter and mean comments. This simple act of indifference was what really irritated the trio. For João, Marcelo, and Felipe, Mariana's indifference was an affront. "Does she think she's better than us?" asked João, feeling his pride hurt. "Nobody ignores us like that," agreed Marcelo. They decided, right then and there, that Mariana would be their next target. The idea of someone like her, a simple girl with no class, challenging them with her silence was something they couldn't let pass. They needed to put Mariana in their place, and this time, they would do it in style. The following days were full of little provocations. João, Marcelo, and Felipe made a point of crossing Mariana's path whenever they could. Sometimes they pretended to trip over her, other times they made jokes about her clothes, or even whispered something for her to hear. However, nothing seemed to work. Mariana remained firm, with the same calm and confident posture, and that infuriated them even more. For the trio, Mariana was increasingly becoming a threat to the control they exercised over the college. She would not bend to the social rules they had imposed. She would not give in to the pressure that so many other students gave into. It was then that João had an idea. If she thinks she's better than everyone else, let's give her the opportunity to show who she really is, he said with a mischievous smile. Marcelo and Felipe soon understood the plan. They would do something big, something that would put Mariana in the spotlight and make her finally break. A party, a prestigious event, where she would be humiliated in front of everyone. Now it was only a matter of time. João's plan was underway. He, Marcelo, and Felipe began spreading the word around the college that they would throw a big party in, one of the most luxurious places in the city. Of course, everyone knew that any event organized by them was synonymous with ostentation and exclusivity. And as expected, the party soon became the talk of the town among the students. But the trio's focus was not just on the party. Their real goal was Mariana. They knew that if they invited her, no one would believe that they had good intentions behind it, but they would do it so carefully that it would seem genuine. João, always skilled with words, was in charge of extending the invitation. One day when Mariana was in the library, João approached her. He surprised her by sitting at the table next to her, with a friendly smile. Mariana, we're organizing a party this weekend. It's going to be a big celebration, and we'd really like you to come. I think it would be a great opportunity for us to get to know each other better, he said, his tone almost sounding sincere. Mariana looked up from her book, studying João for a brief moment. Something in her voice didn't seem natural. It was as if he were forcing sympathy. However, instead of rejecting the invitation, she simply smiled politely and said, "Thanks for the invitation, João. I'll think about it." That left João disconcerted. He expected her to decline or to show some greater hesitation. But Mariana once again surprised him. He left the library with a mixture of anger and frustration. "She'll accept," João said confidently to Marcelo and Felipe later. "And when she gets there, we'll make sure she regrets coming." Marcelo and Felipe laughed, already imagining what they would do. "We could get her an ugly outfit, something that will make her look even more out of place," Marcelo suggested. Felipe, on the other hand, was thinking about ways they could publicly ridicule her during the party, taking photos and posting them on social media. The trio was excited about the plan. Meanwhile, Mariana continued her routine, seemingly unconcerned about what was happening behind the scenes. She knew that João's invitation was no coincidence, but she did not let herself be intimidated. There was something in her gaze that conveyed an unshakable calm. She did not need their approval, and that was what bothered the trio the most. The day of the party was approaching, and everyone was anxious. The rumors about what could happen only grew, and many expected Mariana to become the center of attention, for better or for worse. The trio prepared every detail, certain that Mariana's public humiliation would be the main attraction of the night. Finally, the day of the party arrived. João, Marcelo, and Felipe were impeccably dressed, ready to start the show. The guests began to arrive, all dazzled by the luxurious environment that the trio had prepared. But deep down, everyone was waiting for the arrival of one person in particular, Mariana. As the clock struck the beginning of the evening, the doors opened and Mariana entered. And what happened next left everyone silent. The room was full of laughter and lively conversation, but everything stopped when Mariana entered. She was radiant. Unlike what João, Marcelo, and Felipe expected, Mariana arrived with simple but impeccable elegance. She wore a classic dress without ostentation, but which conveyed confidence and a striking presence. Her hair, which was normally tied up casually, was loose and carefully arranged, giving an air of sophistication. She walked with the same firm posture that everyone had noticed from the beginning, but now there was something more, a glint of determination in her eyes. The guests, who were ready to laugh or whisper about her lack of class, found themselves speechless. Contrary to what the trio had planned, Mariana didn't seem out of place. In fact, she seemed as comfortable in the luxurious surroundings as anyone else there, maybe even more so. João, who had expected to see Mariana nervous and insecure, was visibly uncomfortable. He exchanged glances with Marcelo and Felipe, who also looked confused. "This isn't going as planned," Marcelo muttered, fidgeting nervously with his drink. "Calm down, it's not over yet," João replied, trying to maintain his composure. They knew they needed more time to put their plan into action. So instead of confronting Mariana directly, the trio decided to wait for a more opportune moment to start the humiliation. Throughout the party, João and his friends began to circulate around the room, discreetly orchestrating the next phase of their plan. They knew that the highlight of the night would be the moment when all the guests would be most attentive, the toast that João would make in honor of the occasion. That was when they planned to strike. Meanwhile, Mariana was chatting with some colleagues, her calm presence and light smile disarming any attempt at hostility. With each conversation, it seemed like the tide was changing in her favor. Even those who might have previously been accomplices of the trio now felt drawn to her serenity and authenticity. The time for the toast arrived. João, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, picked up the glass and called everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with this incredible evening, I want to make a toast to courage, to those who have the audacity to be different," he said, giving Mariana a look full of irony. The people around began to notice João's sarcastic tone. Marcelo and Felipe were close by, ready to provoke laughter at Mariana's expense. "Yes, some here show us what it really means to be outside our world, and that is remarkable," João continued, letting out a muffled laugh. The trio was about to execute the final humiliation. Marcelo had prepared a joke to publicly ridicule Mariana, and Felipe already had his cell phone in hand, ready to record it and share it on social media. But what they didn't expect was that the mood at the party would start to change at that very moment. Mariana, clearly realizing what was happening, looked directly at João. Her eyes showed no fear, but absolute calm. She knew exactly what they were trying to do, and decided to act unexpectedly. Before João could finish his speech, Mariana, with a serene smile, raised her own glass and said in a firm voice, "A toast to authenticity, because the true value of a person is not in what they wear or possess, but in who they are." Her answer was so direct and powerful that the entire room fell silent. João, Marcelo, and Felipe, who were ready for the public humiliation, were left speechless. Mariana's boldness in interrupting their plan was something they had not foreseen, and, to the trio's surprise, the guests began to applaud. As the applause filled the room, João, Marcelo, and Felipe looked at each other, astonished. They had not expected Mariana to have the courage to confront them in such an elegant and direct manner. The trio, who had always been in control of the situation, now found themselves cornered, not knowing how to react. But João, unable to accept defeat, decided that there was still a chance to turn the game around. He looked around and realized that some people were still waiting for something to happen. With his face forced into a smile, he raised his glass once more. "Very good, Mariana," he said, pretending to be impressed. "You really surprised us. But I think we can enjoy this evening in another way." He then approached her in a gesture that seemed friendly, but which, in fact, carried a trap. "We would like to invite you to a special celebration at our country house next weekend. A perfect opportunity to leave all this behind and get to know each other better." Marcelo and Felipe nodded enthusiastically, pretending to be friendly. "It's going to be amazing. You should come," Marcelo added, while Felipe smiled, with that mischief that always accompanied him. They were sure that Mariana would accept the invitation, believing that they could win her back at the private party, away from the eyes of the crowd. Mariana, however, was not naive. She knew that this was another attempt by the trio to subdue her, but again, her serene expression did not reveal their intentions. "I'll think about it," she replied calmly, once again surprising the three with her vague answer. The night went on with everyone still trying to understand what had happened. Mariana continued to talk to other guests, while the trio, now without immediate options, walked away to discuss the next steps. For them, Mariana could not emerge victorious. Again, they needed to make sure that the next party would be different. In the following days, João, Marcelo, and Felipe began to prepare for the event. They wanted to make sure that the party would be the perfect setting to finally put Mariana in her place. João, determined, hired a photographer to capture the most embarrassing moments, and Marcelo made sure to choose a place in the country house that was as isolated as possible, away from prying eyes. Felipe, in turn, suggested that they play a series of pranks that could, in some way, embarrass Mariana in front of the few guests that they would carefully select. While the trio plotted, Mariana prepared herself in her own way. She didn't trust their motives, but she wasn't afraid either. Instead, she focused on continuing her study routine, always with the same calm that she had demonstrated so many times. For her, accepting or not the invitation wasn't about falling into the trio's trap, but rather about making her own decisions based on what she believed was right. The weekend finally arrived, and the rumors at the college only grew. Everyone was curious to know if Mariana would show up for the party at the country house. Would this be the trio's chance to regain their position, or would it be another opportunity for Mariana to show her strength? Those who knew João, Marcelo, and Felipe well knew that they would not give up easily. But now there was a new element to this story. Mariana was an adversary unlike any the trio had faced before. And so, on the day of the party, when the lights in the country house came on, and the first guests began to arrive, one question was in the air. Would Mariana show up? And if so, how would the trio react? The night of the party finally arrived. João, Marcelo, and Felipe's country house was a stunning place, surrounded by well-kept gardens, and with a spectacular view of the mountains in the background. Inside, everything was perfectly organized. The trio had spared no expense. Every detail had been carefully thought out to impress the guests, and of course to set the stage for what they believed would be Mariana's final humiliation. The guests began to arrive, all dressed impeccably, as the trio had expected. The conversation in the room was lively, but many were anxious to know if Mariana would actually show up. João, Marcelo, and Felipe were impatient, although they maintained a calm facade. They had planned every move that night, waiting for the exact moment to put their plan into action. The clock was showing 9 o'clock when, finally, the doors opened and Mariana entered. And once again, she surprised everyone. Mariana arrived not with an exuberant or ostentatious look, but with the same elegant simplicity that characterized her. She wore a classic but discreet dress, and her serene posture caused a contrast with the luxurious atmosphere of the party. She walked calmly, her eyes scanning the room, as if she already knew what was about to happen. João, upon seeing her, forced a smile. He approached, greeting her with a superficial hug. "I'm glad you could come, Mariana," he said, feigning a friendly tone. "We were waiting for you." Mariana just smiled and thanked him, without showing any sign of discomfort. This bothered João even more, who realized that his plan was not working as he had imagined. But he still believed that he would have the opportunity to turn the tables in his favor. Marcelo and Felipe soon joined João, exchanging glances and smiles with each other, as if they were ready for the next phase of the plan. They organized a series of activities and games throughout the night, believing that they could make Mariana feel out of place, or even ridiculous, in front of the guests. The first attempt came during one of the games, which involved embarrassing questions and awkward challenges. When it was Mariana's turn, João made sure to ask a question that, in his mind, would put her in an uncomfortable situation. "Mariana, if you had to choose, would you rather be rich and unhappy, or poor and happy?" he asked, with a smile that barely concealed his intention. Mariana, however, maintained her calm demeanor. She thought for a moment and calmly replied, "I prefer to be true to myself, regardless of wealth or poverty. Happiness is not in having or not having, but in being who you really are." Her answer was simple but powerful, and left everyone silent for a few moments. Even João, Marcelo, and Felipe were left speechless. The night went on, and the trio began to realize that, with each attempt to embarrass Mariana, she came out on top. Not because she was trying to be better than them, but because her authenticity and confidence were unshakable. She did not let herself be affected by the trio's petty games, and this began to bother them deeply. Just when they were losing hope that anything would work out, João decided to make his final move. He approached Mariana and said, in a low voice so that the others wouldn't hear, "You may have done well so far, but I know that you don't belong here. You'll never be like us." It was a low blow, meant to hurt her self-esteem. Mariana looked at him for a long moment, and then replied, with the same calm that always accompanied her, "You're right, João. I'll never be like you, because I don't need to be. I'm happy being who I am, and that's something that you, with all the money and power you have, will never understand." Mariana's answer resonated deeply, and the silence that followed was almost palpable. The guests around, who were witnessing the scene, began to realize the true dynamics of that confrontation. Mariana, with her simplicity and authenticity, had won, and the trio, with all their arrogance and wealth, had lost. The silence in the room after Mariana's words was so thick that it seemed to cut through the air. João, Marcelo, and Felipe stood there speechless, unable to find an answer to what they had just heard. For the first time, they were exposed, not by their expensive clothes or grand events, but by their own emotional fragility. Mariana had revealed what everyone there probably already knew, but no one had the courage to say, true strength did not come from money, but from authenticity. The guests, previously silent accomplices of the trio's actions, began to look at Mariana with admiration. Little by little, whispers of respect spread among them, and what was supposed to be a night of humiliation for the simple girl turned into the pinnacle of her personal victory. The party, which had started as a trap, became a stage for Mariana's honesty and dignity. João, feeling the weight of her words and the atmosphere that was forming around him, took a few steps back, his arrogant smile disappearing completely. Marcelo and Felipe, who had always followed João's lead, seemed equally disoriented. They exchanged confused glances, as if trying to understand how everything had gotten so out of control. Finally, João lowered his head, something he had never done before. He realized that, at that moment, there was nothing more to be done. Mariana had won, and there were no tricks or traps that could reverse what had just happened. Mariana, on the other hand, remained calm. She didn't need applause or praise. Her attitude had always been that of someone who knew who she was, regardless of the approval of others. She knew that what she had achieved that night was much more than a simple victory over the trio. She had shown everyone that a person's worth is not measured by what they possess, but by their integrity. As the guests dispersed, many went up to Mariana to congratulate her on her courage. Some, who had previously only watched from afar, now approached to offer support and admiration. Mariana thanked them with her usual simplicity, not letting the moment change her. For her, nothing had been planned as a victory over João and his friends. She had simply been true to who she was from the beginning. João, Marcelo, and Felipe walked away, clearly defeated, but without making a scene. They knew that any attempt to regain what they had lost would be in vain. The image they had built for so long, of superiority and control, had completely crumbled. In the days that followed, the story of that night spread throughout the college. Mariana, without having sought it, became a kind of symbol for many. She represented the silent resistance against arrogance and oppression, and her attitude inspired others not to be intimidated by appearances or power. The trio, in turn, distanced themselves from the social life they had once dominated. They were no longer seen as the untouchables, and the power dynamics at the college changed drastically. But for Mariana, none of that mattered. She continued her journey with the same serenity and focus she had always had. For her, true victory was not in humiliating her oppressors, but in maintaining her integrity and authenticity intact, regardless of the circumstances. And so, the girl who was targeted by the most feared trio in college showed, in a silent and powerful way, that true strength comes from within. João, Marcelo, and Felipe learned the hard way that respect cannot be bought, and that a person's worth cannot be measured by what they wear or own, but by what they carry in their heart.